Shem Hashem, Na'aseh v'Natzliach. Welcome back, everyone, as we are continuing in our journey every Shabbat, going through the Parashah. And this week, we start Sefer Shemot, the Sefer of Geulah, the Sefer of the Exodus, right, of the redemption. So much so that the Rebbe of Kotsk, Zecher Tzadik Libracha, said that when we study the Parshiot of Sefer Shemot, one has to study them like he's learning Tosfot, in depth, with analysis. And he says, why is that? Is because we all today need Geulah. We all need redemption. So if we understand how the Jews were zocheh to Geulah in Mitzrayim, then Be'ezat Hashem, we will have our personal Geulah as well as our communal Geulah. If we study these Parshiot and the lessons that we get out of them, we apply them in our lives. Here's one example. One of the lessons that we learn from Sefer Shemot is you're never allowed to lose hope. You're never allowed to lose hope that Hashem will save us. For example, Moshe Rabbeinu was born at a time when the Gezerat to kill all the baby boys was in place. He was put into a basket on the Nile. If you would ask a mathematician, person who works in statistics, what are the chances of this boy to survive? It'd be 0 to nothing.
Crocodiles.
Right? In seconds. He be crocodile meat. And yet what happened? Moshe Rabbeinu survived. Why? Because at the moment he was placed, Bitya, the daughter of Paro, the one who made the decree, she had tzaraat and she had to go and dip into the Nile. And she goes in there and she sees little baby Moshe. Hashem already set it all up. Hashem set it all up that Moshe Rabbeinu's redemption would take place. That the Geulah would happen. Hashem has a plan, right? A master plan. And we have to believe this. In fact, Rabotai, a very, very important lesson is having Bitachon in Hashem. Trusting in Hashem. The Sefer Ikarim writes, having Bitachon in Hashem is greater than any tefillah that you can say. A person can give tefillah, he can say a prayer to Hashem, Hashem, you're great, Ki Hashem melucha, Moshe b'goyim, you tiferet, you this, Asher, Shulcha, Halel, Zimra, you can give everything, everything you can say to Hashem. But he says Bitachon is greater. Why? Why? Because it's sometimes easy to talk the talk. But when it comes to time to walk the walk, that is something else. That's a different thing. I believe in you in God. I trust you, God. You're almighty. You're everything, God. You're super. No one can go against you. But then, when it comes to push to shove, you forget about Hashem. Chas v'shalom. David HaMelech says in Tehillim, L'chad dumyat tehillah. For you, silence is praise. What does that mean, silence is praise? Sometimes you don't have to say anything. Trust in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Being quiet. And say, I trust in HaKadosh Baruch Hu is greater. The Tehillim says, I will always trust in Hashem, 71:15. And that is greater than praise. You don't need to always talk so much. You got to put it into the walk. You got to actually believe it. When one lives with emunah and bitachon, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will help him in ways he never imagined. There's a story Rabbi Bitachon brings down of a young man who worked as a locksmith. And he moved to Lakewood. And he didn't have any parnasah. Couldn't find work. So his friends told him, put advertisements in the Jewish Link and the Jewish View and this and that. All the different papers that come out. Nothing. No phone calls, no job. And then, he says, you know what? Let me start davening to Hashem. Hashem should help me. All of a sudden, he gets a phone call that day. And the guy answers, the guy who calls him says, we found your wallet, we'd like to return it to you. Checks in his pocket. He has his wallet. He says, I have my wallet. They say, no, this is your name. This is your address. We have your wallet. We found it. He says, okay, I'll come down and check it out. So he comes down to where they said they have his wallet. He comes there. You see, they take out the wallet. They show it to him. Apparently, it's his son's wallet. He has a little boy at home. And his son had a pretend wallet. And he had in there $7. He had a bunch of expired credit cards. And he had in there his father's business cards. So the guy says, we saw we saw you had a bunch of business cards with your name on it. We figured it was you, so we called you. He says, it's my son. It's my son's wallet. The guy said, are you a real locksmith? You see the business card? He says, I am. The guy says, I'm a real estate developer. I'm building buildings. And I'm looking for a reliable locksmith. Maybe you could come and work for us. And this guy had now, Parnasad Lidai, because he was building development after development. This guy was booked. He was a locksmith for him. Why? He was advertising, nothing happened. He had Emunah Kadosh Baruch Hu to help him. All of a sudden, he had the job. He had a steady income. It says in Tehillim, we all know this Tehillim. We look at the mountains. Where is the help going to come? From where? What does that mean? The help comes from Hashem, who created the heaven and the earth. You know what that means? How did Hashem create heaven and earth? Was there something there? Or Hashem? From nothing made something. That's how Hashem can help us. You don't see how. You don't see the salvation. You don't see the Geulah. How is it going to happen? Nothing makes sense. Hashem makes it. The one who made the whole world. But he can't help you from nothing? Of course he can. But like we said, many people, if you ask them, you have Bitachon, you believe in Hashem? Of course. What do you think, Rabbi? I'm not Jewish. All right, Rabbi, you don't think I know about God? Of course. But here, Rabbi Binyamin says, you want to know if somebody really has Bitachon? It says in Pasuk in Tehillim, as this is Yirmiyahu. Yirmiyahu says, Baruch HaGever, Asher Yiftach BaHashem, V'haya Hashem Yiftacho. Says, what does the word V'haya mean? V'haya is an expression of joy. How do you know if someone has bitachon? How is he behaving? Is he happy? Is he happy? Right, in the song by Joey Newcomb, in the song To Be a Yid, he says you don't have to be a Breslover to be besimcha, but you have to be besimcha to be a Jew. Because if you believe there's a Kadosh Baruch Hu, then you have nothing to fear. You know everything's from God. You're going to be in a state of menuhat hanefesh. You're going to be tranquil. You're going to be relaxed. Because you know Hashem's running the show. The Sefer Ikarim says a person shouldn't have any doubts at all because Hashem can bring salvation and no one can prevent it. Sefer Ikarim says, how should you have bitachon? How should your belief in God be? Just like we all know that we're going to go to sleep tonight. The night will go away. And what will come in the morning? The sun, right? That's how you have to believe that the salvation will come. It comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem can turn the darkness into light. And it's not just could, He will. But you have to believe it. But, what can we do? There was a darshan, a Baal darshan. They invited him to speak on the terrible midah of ka'as, of getting angry. And this rabbi got up and he was telling everybody, ka'as, like avodah zarah, ka'as, even you kill yourself, ka'as is this, it's bad, 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 bad. It's terrible. He gave examples and everything. And then, while he was speaking, one of the people in the crowd went to make the rabbi a tea. Made him a cup of tea. He brought the cup of tea to the rabbi, put it on the stender where the rabbi was darshaning, and he accidentally, as he put it, spilled it on the rabbi's papers and his book, on the rabbi's hands. The rabbi's got burnt a little bit. And the rabbi started screaming, "You're such a fool! What's wrong with you? You never know how to do anything!" He just gave a drasha of being not getting angry. And here he is, prime example of getting angry. Right? Why is that? How could that be? The guy just spoke about it. He just said you can't do it. He gave examples. By the way, this is brought down here, but I even saw this in my own life. I was in a shul once. The rabbi gave the drasha about cars. It was in Queens. The rabbi gave such a speech about not getting angry. 2 minutes later, as he was speaking, someone interrupted him and said something. And he went on that guy. He killed him right there. He lashed out at him. And everyone's telling him, Rabbi, Bijal, without anger. It took a long time to calm him down. But how? So he says over here, the tzaddikim of Shloimim would say, the distance between the mind and the heart is longer than the distance between heaven and earth. I'm going to say it again. Very important. Yeah. The distance between the mind and the heart is longer than the distance between heaven and earth. That means a person can know something, but it doesn't penetrate into his body. It doesn't come into his heart. It doesn't become part of him. It's easier to get to heaven than it to happen to him. The Dubna Maggid gives a mashal. Another story he would say. There was a rabbi teaching everybody a segula. He said if there were dogs, scary looking dogs, you should say the special pasuk. What's the pasuk? Ulcho Yisrael, Ulcho Bnei Yisrael. They didn't wet their tongue against the Jews. As he's walking with his students and teaching them this lesson, all of a sudden a pack of dogs come running. And this rabbi, the first one to run away. He's zooming away. So his students, after the dogs went away and everyone's safe, his students came over to the rabbi and said, Rabbi, you told us to say segula. What happened? And he said, no. He said, I knew the segula, but when I saw the dogs, I forgot it. It ran away from me. Why? Because it never was part of him. You can know something. Yeah, I know it. But if it's not part of you, you can't put it into practice. The Divrei Chaim of Tzanz once visited a doctor. And the doctor asked him, what is your occupation? What do you do? So the Divrei Chaim told him, I build bridges. So the doctor was very right to not believe that Divrei Chaim is an engineer. So he said to him, I don't believe you're an engineer. I don't believe you build bridges. So the Tzanz Rav said to him, I'm not building actual bridges, but I'm building a bridge that spans my mind and heart. And that's the hardest bridge to build. Because the mind can know concepts, but it requires constant review until the heart internalizes the lesson. We must say the same applies to Bitachon. We can speak about trusting, we can speak about relying, we can speak about the importance of it. But until it comes into us, it's a whole different story. Right, there's a famous story that happened in the times of the Alshich. The Alshich HaKadosh was talking about Bitachon. And he said, if a person trusts in Hashem, he doesn't have to work. Right? The animals don't work to get the parnasah. Everyone gets it. Why do you have to work? The person really has Bitachon, he won't have to work. So there's one guy, right? He came home, he told his wife, I went to the rabbi. Rabbi said, you don't have to work. She said, you're crazy. He said, no, Rabbi said. And he was into it. So he sold his donkey and went and started reading Tehillim or whatever it was. He was keeping himself busy. Long story short is, he sold the donkey to an Arab, right? And the Arab took the donkey for his business, his works. And one day the Arab came upon a cave, and in the cave he found treasure. And so he loaded all the treasure onto the donkey, and then went back into the cave one last time to make sure he didn't miss any of the treasure. And as he goes back into the cave for the last time, the cave collapses and kills the Arab. The donkey is waiting for his owner. No one's taking him anywhere. So the donkey is hungry, he wants to eat. They have their innate nature of finding things, their own GPS. And he walks right back to the Jew's house, the one he used to work for. The Jew looks, no Arab, and his donkey's back with so much treasure. So, quickly puts it away. No one came to look for the donkey. Everything's his. The students of the Alshich came and they heard this. So they go to the Alshich. They tell the Alshich HaKadosh, we also have Bitachon. How come this didn't happen for us? And the Alshich said, there are many different levels of Bitachon. When one honestly and sincerely has Bitachon, miracles will occur. But you really, really, really have to believe. The Rabbi Biderman, Malach Biderman over here, brings one more story regarding this topic that happened not too long ago. There was a rabbi in Eretz Yisrael, and one of his jobs was weekly he would go to the prison to give encouragement to the inmates there. And while he was there, he was trying to spread Torah, spreading knowledge of halakha. And there was one Chiloni person that was there that was sitting in jail. This is a hardened criminal. He's had hirurei tshuva. He wanted to do tshuva. He started talking to this rabbi. And as they spoke. The rabbi said, maybe you should try working on Shabbat. Try to keep Shabbat. So he said, Rabbi, you have a sefer about Shabbat? The rabbi went, bought him a sefer, gave him the sefer. The next week, the rabbi comes back. And this man tells the rabbi, 1 more week from now, I'm going to be released from this prison. So the rabbi says, there's something I don't know. I know you're supposed to be here 20 years. What happened? He says, Rabbi, I read the book you gave me. And it says over there that if Bnei Israel keep Shabbat 2 times, they get redeemed. And the sefer you gave me brought down from a rabbi, the Hidushei Harim, that this also applies to an individual. Well, guess what? Last week I was very careful, I kept Shabbat. This week I'm going to be very careful too. So it'll be 2 weeks, I'm going to get out. So the rabbi said, hello, Habibi, don't work this way. There's other stuff involved. He said, Rabbi, don't back out now. It's Shabbat. It's going to happen. No. The rabbi the next week couldn't show up. He had a family affair. The following week he shows up to the prison. This guy's not there anymore. He's not there. So he goes, he inquires what happened. Apparently, the judge who sentenced this guy to the prison, he was retiring the week before. And he decided that before he goes out completely, he's going to review every case he ever had a question about. And one of the cases he had was this guy. And when he reviewed it, he said, you know what? I did this when I was younger and I feel it was inappropriate. I want to take it back. And somehow he was able to rescind the decision and this guy got out of jail. This is the story that Malach Biderman brings. Guy believed it. Yeah, Bitachon. 2 weeks is going to get him out of trouble. And so it was. So this is an important lesson. As we said from the Kotzker Rebbe, that when it comes to the Parshiot of Sefer Shemot, we learn how to achieve Geulah. Just like the Jews achieved Geulah in Mitzrayim, we can achieve that same Geulah individual and as the communal. And we have to learn it from this Sefer, the Sefer Shemot. Rabotai, Pesach Kron Shlita shares an amazing story. There was once a woman. She went to Menachem Oval, a friend's brother. And when she got there, they were talking about the Met, talking about the Nifter. Well, I would just segue for one moment. I was reading from Etzahaim last week. He was talking about how to visit when you go to Menachem Ovel somebody. He says, first, people don't really understand what it means when someone lost someone. People tell me that, and not from what I read, people actually have told me this. People come to Menachem Avel and they start asking all sorts of questions. When did he get sick? How long were they sick for? Which doctor they went to? What happened? Who says that the comforters want to talk about that? They just went through this tragic time. They went through this hard period. The halacha is you're not even supposed to start talking, right? Until they start talking. Right? You have to know how to keep quiet. You have to know what to talk about. Perhaps maybe we should be saying, tell us some of the good deeds of the deceased. What did they do? What was something that, your father was special about that so many people didn't know? Person has to come in. I see all the time in the hospital, by the way, when it comes to Bikur Holim. People come, family members come to visit the sick, and this is them looking at the patient. With their eyes opened up, they're all like, well, they make the patient more feeling awkward than anything else. Right? Or they come, and they yap, and this patient wants to sleep. And they don't let the patient sleep. The patient needs to sleep to get better. And the family is there yapping away. I've actually had family members, like immediate family members, like a brother, sister, or son, daughter, come to me and tell me, can you kick out my other family members from the room? They're not letting my mother sleep. They're not letting my father sleep. Can you kick out my family members? This is what they tell me. It's emet. People come, they think they're doing mitzvah, they're not thinking. You have to find out, can you come? You don't stay long. You figure out what they need. That's something just agav on the side that we should talk about. But now, so this woman went to Ibn Ahimavel, and when she asked, what were some of the good deeds about this individual that was passed away? She was told that this man, when it came to Hesed, he didn't think. When it came to Hesed, he didn't make Heshbanot. As soon as he found out that some Hesed was needed, he went and he did it. He went and he did it. She heard this. She was driving home. She's driving home, and she sees a car parked on the side of the road, parked strangely, on an angle. She was going to ignore it, and just continue driving. She looks inside the other car, and she sees a woman, looks like she's sleeping, with her head on the steering wheel. So she's about to drive off, and she remembers what they told her about this man. So she says, you know what? She called Hatzalah. And she said to the Hatzalah, I'm not sure if it's an emergency or not, but I saw a car parked strangely and a woman bent over in the car. I can't stop, but this is what I saw. Maybe you can check it out. Not too long later, she gets a phone call back from Hatzalah. And they said, not only did you save one woman's life, you saved two people's lives. What happened? The woman was pregnant. And she had a medical emergency. And she was able to park her car, but she couldn't call for help. And if it wasn't for you calling Hatzalah, she would have died. And the baby would have died. The fact that she called Hatzalah saved this person's life. Instead of a Pesach Kron, she took the lesson of not thinking and doing Hesed, and did Hesed. You see, if a person starts to think, when it comes to doing Hesed, the Yetzer Hara comes in right away. The Yetzer Hara says, can you really do it? Is it really possible? Do you really have the time? It's offsetting from this. Or the Yetzer Hara would tell you, what are you trying to achieve? You're not going to be able to do it anyway. They need to collect $50,000. You think you're going to collect $50,000? Don't even try. That's the Yetzer Hara. It's interesting. When we got the Torah, what are the two famous words that the Jews said that they were zochet to two special crowns? What did they say? Na'aseh v'nishma. What does that mean? I'll do and then I'll listen. Because if a person says I'll listen first, he does nothing. Why? Because he's listening. He's still listening. I'm still listening. Right? They asked me at work recently that I start evaluations of my employees. I have to evaluate over 60 people's jobs. Make an evaluation of how they've been working, performance evaluation. So they asked, and they told me a month ago, they asked me, did you start it yet? I said, I started thinking about it. Right? That's what happens. If you tell somebody, something, they think about it. They think about it and nothing moves on. The Jewish people said, Na'aseh v'nishma. I'm going to do. I'm ready to act. Now tell me what to do. But you have to be ready to act. Nachshon ben Aminadab. Right? The water. Did he say, how am I going to go in? If I go in, how far do I have to go in? Do I really have to be the one that goes in? Could I go in as Ki'ilu I went in? He didn't make any hashbanot. Now someone realized I got to go in. He went in. He did it. No hashbanot. We have in this week's parasha as well. Who do we have in this week's parasha who just did it? Just do it. The Nike, right? Just do it. Who do we have? We have Bitya. What happened with Bitya? Bitya, or Batya in today's world, right? But in different Yomim, the name is Bitya. Okay, but okay, we'll call her Batya. Batya comes down to the Nile, and she sees the cradle, the basket with Moshe Rabbeinu inside. It's far away from her. What does she do? What does she do? She draws her arm out. Why didn't she say, it's so far away, how am I going to get it? Let me see if I can get the tool. Let me go back and get something. She didn't do that. What did she do? She stretched out her hands. She stretched out her hands, and what happened? It continued to get longer and longer and longer, according to the Parshat, that this is the way it happened, the Ness. But what do we see from there? Don't think. When it comes to Hesed, you do as much as you can. When it comes to Hesed, you do it. Just go ahead and do it. You do the best you can for the Hesed. And you'll see miracles that will happen. You'll see miracles that would happen. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to be thinking about the other Jew. Wants us to try to help another Jew. If Batya would start to think, she would say, is this possible? She would come to a conclusion that it's ridiculous to try. Why should I try? It's impossible. But she knew to do instead of think. And when a person does that, Nisim v'niflaot and siyata d'shmaya comes his way. Because she's doing the Rason of HaKadosh Baruch Hu of helping another Jew. And it's further than that. I'll tell you a little bit more. Rabotai, the Pasuk tells us, the Midrash tells us, right? The Pasuk tells us Moshe Rabbeinu saw the burning bush. Moshe Rabbeinu turned to look. Turned to the side and looked. What does it mean? Turned aside to see. Says the Midrash, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to Moshe, you turn to the side to look of how your brothers are doing? You care about your brothers? Now I will bring the salvation. That's what the Midrash says. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to see that one Jew cares for another. And when HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees that, he says, I care too. I also care. Here he brings a story that there was a community member that his heater broke. And they was living the winter in the house. They had to bundle up. They had no heat, portable heaters. It was still freezing in the house. So one couple decided to help them out. They were trying to raise some money. And as they were raising the money, they had very little money in. All of a sudden, they see that the neighbor's house, the heat's working again. So they find out, they investigate what happened. And the neighbor says, you won't believe it. All of a sudden, last week, already 2 weeks with no heat, the company who installed our heater 10 years ago called us. And they were inquiring how our heater was working. And when we told them it wasn't working, they said they were sorry, sent someone down and changed out all the parts for free. How did it happen? This is how it happened. When one Jew felt for the other and tried to help them, HaKadosh Baruch Hu came down and helped them themselves. HaKadosh Baruch Hu came and helped us. But he wants to see that we want to help. That we want to be there. Bitya wanted to help Moshe. All of a sudden her hands stretch. Who's stretching her hands? Hashem. Hashem made it happen. Because when you want to do something right for Hashem's children, Hashem says, I also want to help. And he makes it happen now. This reminds me quickly of one other story that we talked about in the past. There was a father and a son. And the father stayed home, and the son went to work. And they only had one coat. So the son wanted to take the coat. But the father lived in the house where there was holes in the walls. So he said he needs the coat. So they went to the rabbi to find out who should get the coat. The son who goes to work, or the father who's home. And the rabbi said, I don't know. The son and the father come back home, and each one starts to now think about their other one. The son says, oh, I heard my father say he's really cold, he's old. You know what? I'll figure it out. I'll live without the cold. The father, when he heard the son talking to the rabbi of how he's working outside in the cold, he said, I feel bad for my son. Let him have the cold. The next week they come back to the rabbi, and they tell the rabbi, it's okay, we don't need your psak, we figured it out. And the father says, I'll give the coat to the son. The son says, I'll give the coat to the father. Now they're arguing who should get the coat. Each one's giving it to the other. The rabbi says, 1 minute. He runs into his wardrobe, pulls out a coat, and gives him his coat and says, you can have my coat. So the rabbi, the two people say, the son and the father say to the rabbi, if you had a coat last week, why didn't you just give it to us last week? Why did you go through all this? And the rabbi said, last week you were saying the coat's mine, you were saying the coat's mine, so I said my coat's also mine. But this week, you're saying the coat's his, and he's saying the coat's yours, so I'm also saying the coat's yours. You know, it's the atmosphere we create. When we create that we want to help, Hashem says, I want to help. I also want to be there. This is a very important lesson to take out. We want the Geula, right? And that means being ba'achdut and helping one another. Hashem says, you're helping one another? I'll help you too. I'll also get you out of this misery. I'll also get you out of this exile and bring you to the redemption. For our final lesson on this week's Parshat, we have, in this week's Parshat, it tells us that Moshe vayigdal. Vayigdal Moshe. And Moshe grew up, and it says it twice. In Perek Bet, Pasuk Yud, and Pasuk Yud Aleph. And the Ramban tells us, what are these two Vayigdal that grew up Moshe Rabbeinu? One, says the Ramban, Nachmanides says, first one is Moshe Rabbeinu grew up physically. He's no longer a child. Vayigdal, the second time, Moshe Rabbeinu grew up to be a man of spiritual stature. An Adam Gadol who thinks about someone else. That's when Moshe Rabbeinu went out, it says, and he saw his brothers in their pain. And Moshe Rabbeinu became an Adam Gadol. Gadol, says the Ramban, the greatness of a Jew, the definition that we want to give to a Gadol today is someone who cares about another person. If you take a look throughout Jewish history, our great Chachamim, our Gedulim, cared about the other person. I came across a beautiful story of Rav Shach. Rav Shach, when he was in his 90s, he was old, couldn't walk so well. One day, one of his students came to get him to come to the yeshiva. And when the student came, Rav Shach said, oh, thank Baruch Hashem, you came, help me dress up. We're going to go to the apartment building on the next floor. You got to come with me. And Rav Shach takes a bag of chocolates from his kitchen cupboard, dresses up in his Rosh Yeshiva outfit, and goes upstairs apartment. He knocks on the door. He smiles to 3 little children and tells them, here's the chocolate. And he gives them chocolate. And they then take out their cameras and they take pictures with Rav Shach giving them chocolate. So the Talmud is beside himself. What is Rav Shach doing? He's supposed to go to yeshiva, give a shiur, and he's busy giving out chocolate to the children. So he asked Rav Shach, what happened? And Rav Shach said, this is a neighbor of mine. And the parents went to America to help one of their children. He needed to go to the hospital there. And while they were there, the mother flew back to Israel because she was giving birth. And now she's alone with all her children at home. And the father's not here, the brother's not here. They're feeling down. So once a week, I try to come up here and cheer them up. And give them chocolate and take pictures with them, give them different sweets. Rav Shach, the guy's in the 90s, the Rosh Yeshiva. And what is he doing? He's going and caring about the other guy. Going and caring about children. Because that's an Adam Gadol. Adam Gadol is someone who takes care of somebody else. Says Rav Shimon Shkop in his classic sefer, Sharei Yosher. He says that from the moment a child is born, the child cares about one thing. Me. It's all about me. It's all about himself. He thinks he cares that it's 2 o'clock in the morning and his mother didn't sleep all day and she just fell asleep. No, he's hungry. The baby's hungry. He wants to eat. He'll wake up the whole house. Because he wants to sleep. He wants to eat. Right? He's all worried about me. Now, as a child becomes a little older, he starts to realize, or she starts to realize there are other people in the world. But still, it's about me. Right? Think about a toddler. Like they know there's other people there, but they're still worried about me. Part of the development of a person, says Rav Shimon Shkop, is that he starts to realize there's other people in the world. And he starts to care for other people. How does he do that? By nature, a person is worried about me. Says Rav Shimon Shkop, the person redefines who me is, who he is. Meaning, as a child, it's just me. But as I get older and I get married, now my definition of me is me and my spouse. And as I have children, the definition of me is me, my wife, and my children. Right? The me is expounded. Who I am is expounded. So that's how a person starts caring about other people. Says Rav Shimon Shkop. But you know what it means, a gadol? A gadol b'Yisrael is someone who realizes that his me is all of Klal Yisrael. Not just him, his wife, and his family. But he realizes it's all of Klal Yisrael. That's his me. That's his definition of himself. Right? As it says in Perkei Avot, it says, right, if I'm not for myself, who's going to be for me? But then it says, Kishani latzmi. If I am for myself, only for myself, ma'ani, then what am I? Because a person is not just himself. He's all of Klal Yisrael. Says Rav Shimon Shkop, perhaps this is what we say at the Brit Milah. What do we say at the Brit Milah when we give a Brit to an 8-year-old boy, 8-day-old boy? What do we say? Zeh hakatan gadol yeh. Which means this child who's thinking only about himself now should one day be able to think about everybody. Zeh hakatan gadol yeh. Not just me for myself, but me for Klal Yisrael. Chacham Ovadia, Zecher Tzadik Lebracha, would share this story. I'm going to try to, digest the story a little bit, make it a little bit smaller. The story goes, there was a community in Russia that the governor was very mean to the Jews. Taxed them extra, did all these different things, and he used to put ransom, kidnap them, The Jews would pay and pay. But they ran out of money. And he kept kidnapping Jews, and he had to pay them to get them. So the Rav of the Kehila, the Rav of the city said, that's it, we're not paying the governor anymore. The Rav was very well versed in Russian, and he wrote a very nice letter to the Empress Catherine of Russia. And he sent the letter there saying that this governor is unfair, he's not good, can you please investigate? He wrote it so nicely that Empress Catherine sent an investigative team to look. And they looked and they found out that it was true. And so they sacked the governor and they put someone else in the place. And she said, I want to find the rabbi who wrote this letter, I want to speak to him. So they called this Rav. And she started talking to him. And she said, listen, your letter really moved me. You should know we investigated, we got rid of him, you're not going to deal with him anymore. We can put something nice there, someone good there. But tell me, what have the Jews have been experiencing? Tell me a little bit about it. So he starts talking nicely. And all of a sudden, he starts screaming. The empress is taken aback. She says, Rabbi, you wrote so nicely, so eloquently in your letter. You started speaking very nicely. And now all of a sudden you're shouting at me? I'm the empress. You better catch your tone. And the rabbi said, Empress, I'm not shouting at you. When I'm screaming, that's all the Jews' pain coming out. That's the pain of all of Klal Yisrael in the city that's dealing with this governor. That's the pain that you're feeling. That's what you're hearing. It's not me shouting at you. When the empress heard this, she said to him, I'm giving you some government powers as well. And she put him on the government to help Klal Yisrael. But that's the idea. Moshe Rabbeinu was a gadol. The pasuk says that he was crying in the basket. He was a na'ar, a child, an older child, not a baby, someone older. Why? Moshe Rabbeinu's voice was the voice of Klal Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu, he saw himself, not just himself. He saw himself that all Klal Yisrael's with him. So much so, the Midrash says that they were crossing the Yam Suf. Where was Moshe Rabbeinu when they were crossing? You ever thought about where Moshe Rabbeinu was? They're crossing the Red Sea. Where's Moshe Rabbeinu? Moshe Rabbeinu stayed in the back. He waited for everyone to go. He said, I got to make sure every Jew makes it through. Like the captain, Lavdo. But yeah, in the Hudson River, the miracle on the Hudson, yeah. But that was Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu made sure every Jew made it through. Because that's how he defined himself. That is our job, I will tell you. Our job is to take these lessons of how the Jews were Zochet Geula and put it into place. And so to review briefly the three lessons that we had from this week's Parshat. Lesson number one, the importance of Bitachon. The importance of Bitachon, and not just Bitachon as I'm saying I believe in God, but in practice, making our minds and our hearts connect. So it's really true. Lesson number two is, when chesed comes your way, don't think. Do. And you'll be blessed with miracles and the helping hand of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And our third and final lesson was that we have to all be Gedolim. You have to be Gadol like Moshe Rabbeinu. We have to see ourselves, not just me, myself, me and my spouse, me and my children, me and my family, my parents. And the greater you are, the more you see yourself being responsible for all of Klal Yisrael. And you do what's necessary for them. We should hear good things. They should blow themselves up. Iran with this guy and that guy, all the Islamic terrorists here, they take care of themselves. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give us the Geulah Shlema. Amen. Shabbat Shalom and Kulam.